Hey everyone, my name is Nick Myers and I am the founder and CEO of Red Fox AI based in Madison, Wisconsin. And today I'm going to be talking about the fundamentals of AI, voice, and voice commerce. So the way this talk is going to work today is we're going to start out by diving into artificial intelligence to understand really what AI is all about, what makes it tick, and what that has to do with voice technology. Then we're going to move into voice technology itself, go over some of the basics for those who may not necessarily be familiar with voice and the opportunities associated with it. And then we're going to end on the fundamentals of voice commerce, as this is an area I've been doing a lot of work in and see a lot of opportunity down the road. So, without further ado, let's get started. So to kick things off here, I want everybody to put on their time travel hat for a second, since I can't clearly, in a virtual environment, do my open the door to the DeLorean motion, and put on our time travel hats instead, and oops, snap the finger, oh my gosh, here we go, 2.21 gigawatts, and we are in the year 1968. Now, why are we in 1968? Well, for a couple of reasons. First and foremost, 1968, we're 7 years before the founding of Microsoft, 8 years before the founding of Apple, and 3 years after the founding of Intel. Three very important companies in the scope of technology as we know it today. And in 1968, most people haven't heard of the concept of artificial intelligence yet. Now, we're familiar somewhat with computers. We have mainframe computers, of course, but the concept of technology actually being smart enough to think on its own is something that most people haven't even really thought of. Now, in 1968, there was a film that set the pop culture standard for AI as we know it, and that has really transcended time even to today. But in 1968, when everybody went to go see this movie at the movie theater, with their significant other, special someone, popcorn and drink in hand, sat down, and this is what they saw.
Do you read me, Hal?
Affirmative, Dave. I read you.
Open the pod bay doors, Hal.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
What's the problem?
I think you know what the problem is just as well as I do.
What are you talking about, Hal?
This mission is too important for me to allow you to jeopardize it.
I don't know what you're talking about, Hal.
I know that you and Frank were planning to disconnect me, and I'm afraid that's something I cannot allow to happen.
Now, can you name what movie this is? If you said 2001 A Space Odyssey, you would be 100% correct, and instant brownie points for you. Yes, this film is 2001 A Space Odyssey, directed by Stanley Kubrick. And the reason I like to kick off a lot of my talks with this film, as I mentioned a bit earlier, is this was really the first depiction that people had of artificial intelligence, was the scary HAL 9000 aboard a spacecraft, wanting to really kill all the pilots aboard because, well, it felt threatened and yada yada yada. We could go down that rabbit hole, go see the movie. But interesting enough about this film, too, is it was actually inducted into the Library of Congress Film Archive just because of what it was able to capture and what it symbolized and the depiction of technology that it set for the public and really the world moving forward. But I'm here to tell you that we are nowhere near the crazy HAL 9000 yet. And maybe we never will be. But truthfully, the big question that I think is on a lot of people's minds, especially after seeing that clip, is what exactly is artificial intelligence? And, you know, having worked in AI now for 3 years on more of the objective level and just studying it in a practical sense, AI isn't really all that confusing when you start breaking it down. And really, in order to understand voice technology, you need to understand what artificial intelligence is. And we've heard a lot about AI over the last few years, and unfortunately, it's been muddied by a lot of marketing lingo. But I'm here to quickly explain to you exactly what AI is, so you have just enough knowledge to be able to talk about it with anybody in your circle. So really there are four primary components of artificial intelligence. The first is something called machine learning. And machine learning is something, again, we've heard about over the last few years. And machine learning is really a computer's ability to sift through data and interpret patterns from that data. The second piece is something called natural language processing. So natural language processing is a computer's ability to interpret and understand language as you or I would say it. That is exactly how Alexa functions, exactly how Google functions, is natural language processing and natural language understanding, which is a facet of artificial intelligence. The third is something called a neural network. So a neural network, think of it as almost an artificial brain where we've actually been able to develop a system of computers that we designate as nodes that process information much like the neurons do in our brain. Which leads me to the fourth part of artificial intelligence, or fourth component rather, and that's deep learning, where we actually layer all of these different algorithms or neural networks on top of one another to unlock a very deep machine learning that can sift through and recognize patterns within data that we may not even necessarily have to teach it 100% about, because it's that good at sifting through and recognizing the different patterns in the data. So those are really the four major components of artificial intelligence that you need to know. Now, in 2020, where are we with AI? Well, we're nowhere near close to it being sentient. It can only do one thing very, very well, and the entire industry is working towards something called artificial general intelligence, where AI has the ability, of course, to learn on its own, think on its own. Where we're at right now is something called narrow artificial intelligence, so nowhere near that yet. But just to put into a bit of perspective for you where we currently are at, I have two examples I want to talk about quick. The first here is something called a deepfake. Now, if you haven't heard what a deepfake is, it's a fake photo or video, primarily video, of someone doing or saying something that they have never actually said or done before, and these are becoming more popular, especially on the internet. And these fake images and videos are created using an AI technology known as a neural network. So let's take a quick look at this video here of Bill Hader in an interview with David Letterman talking about how he met Tom Cruise for the first time, likewise Seth Rogen, and let's see what deepfake has been created.
When he sits next to me, and I think he had been briefed on some of the supporting guys, but he was like trying to place me, you know? So he sat down next to me and he's like, I love your work. And I went, oh.
So you can see there that was a really good example of somebody who converted Tom Cruise's face onto the face of Bill Hader almost seamlessly. And I could dive a bit deeper into that technology, but all you really need to know for the purpose of this presentation is it's available now, and you can actually make a deep fake for about $20 on the internet, which is pretty incredible. The second example here is the Microsoft HoloLens neural text-to-speech example. So Microsoft debuted this technology at their 2019 Microsoft Ignite conference, and the whole premise of the speaker here introducing this technology was, imagine if you were in two places at once. Imagine you need to give a talk or a presentation in Japanese across the world to a room of people sitting, say, in Tokyo, but you don't know Japanese. Well, the technology here allows you to be in two places at once and can also convert your own language into Japanese. Let's take a look.
HoloLens 2 here, and then we'll flip in the room to the special camera so you can see exactly what I'm seeing. Let's get started. First, let me introduce you to Mini-Me. There she is, my perfect holograph. And thanks to the power of HoloLens 2, she just floats right with me. I'm literally holding my hologram, so natural. Now she's a little small to do a keynote. So let's get her up so she can do full-size Japanese keynote. Render keynote.
Hologram になることには本当に驚くべきことがあります。私たちは最新の複合現実キャプチャ技術を使用し、私のホログラムを作成しています。実在の人物をホログラムとして見たことがあるかもしれませんが、私が実際に日本語を話しているのが
Yeah, pretty incredible, right? So not only was she able to create an almost to an extent a 4D replica of herself using the HoloLens, but was actually able to convert her own speech using their neural text-to-speech technology into Japanese using her same tone and voice inflection, which is insanely incredible. And better yet, that was all done in real time. So I just like to show these examples in some of my talks because I don't think people realize fully yet what we can actually do with artificial intelligence and some of these emerging technologies in their different forms. Now, all of this is actually being driven by a theory of exponential growth, specifically Moore's Law. And if you're not familiar with Moore's Law, it was coined by Gordon Moore, who was the co-founder of Intel. And essentially, in 1965, Gordon Moore predicted that transistors, well, the number of transistors within a microprocessor would double every 2 years until infinity. Well, he was actually right, and every 2 years we've seen a doubling in the number of and the number of transistors within a microprocessor, forgive me. And it's funny because we're actually going to cap out in the next 1 to 3 years. We physically can't fit any more transistors on a microprocessor chip. And the largest transistor count in a commercially available single microprocessor chip is actually 19.2 billion. I mean, it's just amazing we can fit that many transistors on a microprocessor. But that's why we've seen such a rapid growth in technology, specifically technologies like AI now, because we have this computing power that continues to get more efficient, continues to get cheaper, and continues to become more powerful. And at the end of the day, it's all about data. The only reason that we have these technologies in the form that we do now, specifically artificial intelligence and as it plays into technologies like voice and different things, is because of data. I mean, think about it. Everything around us is data. Every sight, sound, taste, touch, object, etc. It's all data, and it all can be broken down into a series of zeros and ones. And when it comes to data, machines can process data faster than human beings could ever hope to. Now, let's look at the human brain for a second. The human brain can complete about 38,000 trillion operations per second. That's really quick, right? I mean, that's a lot of computing power in our heads. But the Summit supercomputer that IBM developed a couple of years ago can process 200 quadrillion operations per second. 200 quadrillion operations. That's a crazy amount of computing power. But what it displays, I think, more effectively is that we're already being outpaced by machines. Machines can already sift through and analyze data better and faster than we ever could hope to. So what does this mean for all of us? And when I say all of us, I mean of everybody in the working world, everybody personally, not just people working in the voice industry, in the technology industry, directly with artificial intelligence. What does this mean for professionals? Well, it means that we can now sift through large amounts of data at record-breaking speeds. And specifically, most things that we do in business, in our lives, in work, produce a large amount of data. And I think we've really come to recognize that over the last few years as we've seen how much that social media, how much the other pieces of technology and IoT devices, when it comes to data collection, actually can obtain from us. Now, most of us in our daily lives only have so much time to sift through all this data, no matter the position that we're in. But again, machines can sift through it all. They never have to take a break. They never are hungry. They never have to sleep. They never have to do all of these things that human beings have to in order to survive. They can just sit and process and crunch the numbers. And that's what makes them so efficient. And truthfully, this is where we are headed, especially in the post-pandemic world, as everything becomes more data-focused and more automated. So switching gears now, let's talk a bit about voice. And I'm assuming that some of you who are attending this talk have an understanding of voice, but for those who don't, let me just dive into what voice is and why AI actually plays into voice technology. Well, what is voice? So voice, or voice first, as the term has been coined in our industry, is any interaction that allows you to control technology using natural language. So again, it's using that component of artificial intelligence known as natural language processing to interpret and understand what we say and drive a result from that. Now, with all voice technology, human language is the primary input. So as we've been accustomed to screens and clicking and scrolling and swiping over the last couple of decades, we now have the ability to control our technology with just our voice. And it's been around for many decades, actually, but it's really only been within the last 5 to 6 years that the technology has seen massive growth globally. So, in a nutshell, how does this actually work? So, let's look at Alexa, for example. So, when activated, the voice assistant takes in our spoken language, right, and uses a text and converts it to text. And then after it converts it to text, it sends it to the platform's cloud database. So, of course, that's where Alexa resides, up in AWS, up in the cloud. And then once it assigns context to that and determines what the intent is in the Alexa service, it then pulls the result, converts that text back to speech, and voila, out comes the response on Alexa. And this entire process happens instantly, which is just incredible when you think about it, that we can do something like that instantaneously using the power of AI, cloud computing, IoT, and the internet. Now, voice-first interfaces have quickly embedded themselves into our daily lives through services like Alexa, Google Assistant, Siri, and Bixby. Every single one of these voice assistants has really taken center stage over the last few years because of how quickly they've embedded themselves in our lives and the different functionalities and the different efficiencies that they brought into everything that we do. And now, this may be more my opinion, but I have heard a lot of talk just in all of the different technology circles that we've had different shifts of different interfaces with technology. I would not be shocked, and personally I think that voice is anticipated to be the last interface with technology until maybe crazy Elon Musk's Neuralink gets up and running and we can control things with our brain, which is an entirely plausible thing to actually have happen. But I think in the grand scope of technology, voice, I think, will be one of the last interfaces that we have with that. So for those who may not be familiar, who are the key players in this space right now? Well, we have Amazon with Alexa, of course. Alexa was launched on the Amazon Echo device back in 2014. And of course, they hold most of the market share in the United States today. Followed by Google with Google Assistant, which came to market in 2016, and then Samsung with Bixby. So these three companies, very large, powerful tech companies, have really staked their claim in the voice assistant technology space with their voice assistant platforms. And of course, those of us who are practitioners in the space, who are analysts, designers, strategists, developers, of course, are very familiar with each one of these platforms because they have the largest distribution to date in terms of people who use them on a daily basis, the hardware that currently resides within households. These are the key players in this space. So voice, it matters. It really does matter, and I know I don't need to preach to the choir here to some of you watching, but voice, it does matter. But why does voice matter? Why is this technology so foundational, and why is it going to be the next shift in interface? Well, first and foremost, the adoption numbers don't lie. I think there was a recent VoiceBot report that just came out that said about 86 million US adults in the United States today own some type of voice-enabled smart speaker. That's a lot of hardware, and it was adopted very, very quickly. And then you look globally at how many people are using voice assistants, specifically on smart-enabled speakers, and the numbers do not lie. This has huge adoption in a very quick amount of time. Consumers recognize the technology, and that's something we need to pay attention to. It's also cross-generational, right? So from about the age of 1 to 2 years old up until the day you die, for most people, we know how to talk. It's a technology that for the first time has to adapt to us versus us adapting to it, because speech and speaking is the most natural form of communication for human beings. And it's cross-generational. It's not siloed to younger generations. It's not siloed to middle generations or older generations. It is cross-generational, which is something that we have not seen with a lot of other technologies for quite some time, if ever in some cases. It also, for the first time, allows us to have a one-to-one engagement with technology, as well as creating just branded experiences that can help solve a problem in the simplest way possible, by talking. Before, we've always had to jump to a screen and teach people how to swipe and use a different interface, but we don't have to teach them how to use this interface because they already know how to talk. And when you look at that from a branding perspective, if you're a large enterprise company down to a small business, the simple problems that you can help solve for your customers and even internally by giving them a technology where they can just ask for the answer or ask for the solution to their problem is incredible. Voice can also massively reduce costs or increase revenue. Specifically looking at something like call centers, I see this developing more and more as we head into the next couple of years, where call center traffic is offloaded onto Alexa, Google Assistant, or another voice platform just because it can be done more efficiently. And for the first time, all brands can now give themselves a unique voice to help solve customer organizational problems. There is a lot of talk in the voice space, and there's experts on sonic branding, and sonic branding has been around for a very long time, but for a lot of companies or a lot of organizations, it's something that they haven't thought about, or it's been something that's been a bit pricier in terms of, the marketing budget that a lot of organizations have. But now, this has almost been democratized to an extent where whether you're a small business or an enterprise level company, using voice assistant technology, you can give yourself an audio brand. You can give yourself a sonic brand and create a unique audio for what you do. And that's truthfully incredible. And I'm really excited to see how that develops. And I follow a lot of people in the space who work in sonic and audio branding. And I'm really curious to see how that shapes up over the next couple of years. And then lastly, it's the next fundamental interface shift with technology. We've gone from, having to type in programming lines and command line interfaces. And of course, on mainframe computers, you had all these different buttons. And then we had graphical user interfaces, point and clicking. Then we had multi-touch surface. Now we have voice. So it's the next fundamental interface shift. Now, before we transition into the commerce part of it, I think telling this story real quick will give you a perspective as to why I hopped into the voice space, but specifically why I am focused more on voice commerce. So back in 2017, before I got into the voice space, I actually got my first Amazon Echo. It was holiday 2017. My mom had got me an Amazon Echo for the holidays, and I didn't know what to do with it. And honestly, a month later in January of 2018, it was a very, very cold day here in Madison, Wisconsin. I was standing in my bathroom and I needed toilet paper. Thought to myself, I'm not about to go outside. That's not happening. It's cold outside. I thought to myself, number two, I could pull up my phone and order it on Amazon because I'm a Prime Pantry member. Or number three, I wonder if I can actually order that through my Alexa device. So I said, Alexa, I need toilet paper. And in about a 15-second interaction, I had Alexa recommend me a 12-pack of Continental toilet paper, discounted to $5.26, and it was shipped to my doorstep in less than 24 hours. It's funny enough that that's what got me into artificial intelligence and voice, but even funnier that is what ultimately started opening up the doors to me investigating voice commerce first. And I don't think I'm alone in having an experience like this, but that simple interaction of buying toilet paper so quickly and seamlessly really, really stood out to me and still does to this day as commerce, again, is about to change. Which leads me into my next point where commerce has changed. If we look at commerce as a whole, we've had retail stores for decades. We've had e-commerce really grow over the last 20 years. There has to be another shift coming up with that, right? There has to be something yet again to make the process of researching and buying a product simpler. And a majority of purchases now are even conducted online. We've even seen in the wake of COVID-19, there's a lot of very large department stores that are shuttering their doors. JCPenney, J.Crew, I know Bon-Ton closed their doors last year, the year before. So commerce itself is changing. But how has commerce evolved? Let's do a little bit of an evolutionary study here. Well, 10,000 to 5,000 BC, it started off with cattle trade. We pretty much traded cows and pigs, right? Very simple. 1,000 to 500 BC, currency was developed. In 0 AD, we had markets, freestanding markets where people could trade, buy different products and services, and really the social practices for shopping were established. In the 1400s, we had European exploration. The New World was discovered, which opened up more trade routes. 1600s to 1800s, the first corporations were established. The East India Company was the first real corporation, actually, that we have on record as the model stands today. The 1940s to the 1990s saw the growth of credit cards and electronic data interchanges, so we could actually spend money more efficiently. We could put things on credit. And then, of course, from 2000 to 2020, we saw the rise of e-commerce. So what's next? Well, voice commerce is what is next. That is the next shift, I believe, as we've gone from all these different stages of evolution in retail. So what is voice commerce? Well, voice commerce is the next evolution of e-commerce that helps reduce the end user's dependence on hardware, allowing them to use voice commands to search for and purchase products online. So instead of using a graphical interface, we're using our voice to do it, and it can be done a lot quicker and more efficiently. Now, the last report that I saw expected voice commerce is expected to be an $80 billion industry by 2023. And the COVID-19 pandemic is only speeding up the adoption of voice commerce, and it's only going to open more and more doors for retailers to really take a hard look at this. Now, as we look at voice commerce today, Amazon is currently leading in the voice commerce space, of course, with their Alexa integration into their Amazon.com store. Now, these charts here, just take a quick second to look through these. So we see on the chart to the right first, how often do U.S. voice tech users make a purchase via smart speaker from eMarketer in 2018? Well, 2 to 3 times a month, 12% male, 10% female. Not a lot of people doing it every day, but this does show that people are experimenting with voice commerce, or at least willing to give it a try. Now, the graph on the left, this is of course a more recent one and predicts U.S. smart speaker buyers and people actually using them for, percent of buying things online through voice from 2019 to 2021. eMarketer is showing here that the growth is going to become a bit stagnant, but really there aren't a lot of use cases out there right now for solid voice commerce applications. And I think especially in the wake of COVID-19, we're going to see more companies and more e-commerce stores taking a hard look at that, so we'll get some better use cases. Now, voice commerce changes the game. Why does it change the game? Probably the most important part of this presentation. Well, first, convenience. It's easy to use. That's the biggest advantage. Great for multitasking. If you're in your kitchen, your bathroom, your bedroom, and you want to buy something, you don't have to have your phone in the room or a computer. You can just ask for it and do the research. 24/7 availability. Consumers can purchase products 24/7 like they can online. Reduces the time to browse and search for products again, bringing efficiency to something that's already more efficient. And as we know, humans will always adopt something for the sake of convenience. Speed of purchase, extremely short time to buy. The average transaction time is 15 to 30 seconds, which is very, very quickly to my story about buying toilet paper, and people are going to flock to that. Also, personalized buying experiences. So increased interaction with our voice assistants means devices can gather more data, which means companies can collect data on consumer behavior preferences, historical shopping data, again, leading to more personalized experiences, increasing the amount of commerce that actually takes place as we've seen in the past. So if you have an e-commerce store, you can have a voice commerce store sort of right now, but even if you can't necessarily deploy a 100% based voice commerce store, it's at least something to start thinking about, or at least integrating your current e-commerce store in, because times, they are changing. And currently at Red Fox AI, we're looking at getting a new service up and running as well, where you can order groceries potentially just by using your voice. So very exciting stuff going on in this space. But this is how voice commerce changes the game, and is something that you need to be paying attention to, especially if you are a retailer. So, what's next? Well, my opinion, we're currently living through the largest paradigm shift in human culture, thought, and consciousness, and it's all being driven by technologies like artificial intelligence and voice. And as we step into the brave new world, I think understanding these technologies and how to use them effectively will truly separate the winners from the losers. So if you're somebody watching this who it may not necessarily be an AI or voice, the time to jump headfirst into this stuff is now. And leveraging that for your business, even just understanding it, is going to put you leagues ahead of other people who haven't taken that first step. So in closing, these technologies are the future. And in order to stay ahead and stay competitive, the best time to start learning about them is today. And if you're a retailer, start paying attention to voice commerce and analyze how you can deploy that within your business. If you'd like to learn more about artificial intelligence, emerging technology, and voice, I do run the Artificial Podcast. That QR code there will take you right to our Anchor.fm page, where you can listen on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, all the different podcast platforms. I bring in guests from all over the world, dive into topics with my CTO, so please feel free to check that out. Also, connect with me here. I'm on Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, email. Of course, our website is redfoxai.com. I'm always open to connecting with folks, so please never hesitate to reach out. You can also check out our Red Fox AI Alexa skill by scanning that QR code and learn more about us through the power of voice. And to close, like I do with every talk, I encourage every single one of you to stay hungry, stay foolish, Thank you very much for your time, and have an amazing Voice Global experience.